Late this afternoon, the Senate Judiciary Panel voted on whether to push forward Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson's nomination to the Supreme Court, deadlocking, with every single Republican voting against her. The Democrats do still have ways to put her nomination forward for a full vote, and the deadlock was expected. But still, it is a remarkable state of affairs that not a single member of the GOP could find enough reason, or should I say enough integrity, to support as qualified a judge as Judge Jackson is. Speaking of which, long before Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas's wife, Virginia Ginni Thomas, became the center of controversy over whether her efforts to overturn the 2020 election posed a conflict of interest for her husband, she was a member of a group called LifeSpring, which billed itself as a self-help program, but which she later said was more like a cult. It's an experience she reflected on with other former LifeSpring members in a resurfaced video from 1986.
When you come away from a cult, you have to find a balance in your life as far as getting involved with fighting the cult or exposing it. And kind of the other angle is getting a sense of yourself and what was it that made you get into that group, and what open questions are there that still need to be answered.
The video was posted to Twitter by cult expert Stephen Hassan, a former member of the Moonies cult himself, who hosted that event. He's also the author of the 2019 book about what he considers another cult, the cult of Trump. He's also written several others on how to free people from cults and hosts the Influence Continuum podcast. Stephen Hassan joins me now. It's good to meet you, Stephen. Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks so much for covering this.
Tell me a little bit more about LifeSpring briefly, if you can.
Essentially, it was a large group awareness training. People would be ponying up money to go to a hotel ballroom where everything was manipulated and controlled. People wouldn't know what would be happening. And a lot of hypnotic techniques and behavior modification techniques to break down people's egos and to build them up in the image of the cult, to basically get them in like a multi-level marketing thing where they have to sign up for the next course, the next course, the next course for transformation.
How did Thomas get out of the cult?
So my understanding is that she had a deprogramming intervention. One of the principal people who did it his name was Kevin Garvey. He's since deceased. And back in the 80s, the approach was very much persuasion and giving content and trying to kind of snap the person out of it. But getting someone to the point of realizing the group is bad is very different than what we as mental health professionals do to help people process and digest the experience. But I wanted to share this video because Ginni actually was an activist in Washington. She set up congressional briefings to create Cult Awareness Week to honor the 10th anniversary of Jonestown. She actually asked me to be on a panel, which I did for a congressional briefing. And then she even introduced me to Judge Thomas at a meeting in 1992. That's how passionate she was at teaching people about cults. And so the question I'm being asked is, how could she be believing in QAnon and that the election was stolen? And my answer is there are a lot of very powerful authoritarian cults that make up the cult of Trump. And my guess, it's only an informed guess, is that maybe Kevin Garvey's right-wing traditionalist religious ideology played a piece of it, but maybe she was just radicalized by somebody else.
I want to play a little bit more from the video you released. Again, this is 1986. Here's Ginni Thomas again.
I want to expose LifeSpring. I want to keep other people from going through that experience, but I also don't want to go overboard in that regard. I still have so many questions, and I still have so many things that I want to talk to about with other people and find people who believe as I do and who are searching as I do. And so all those things that got me to LifeSpring are still there.
So all those things that got me to LifeSpring are still there. I mean, she said it herself. I was going to use the word recidivism, shows how uninformed I am. I didn't mean it, but you know what I mean. How often is it that somebody who escapes a cult then is susceptible to being drawn in by another?
Right. So one thing she described, this is very characteristic of authoritarian cults, is if you want to leave, you're given irrational fears that terrible things will happen to you if you leave, and members keep trying to contact you in order to get you back in. That would be, recidivism. In her case, and I've seen this over and over again with people who get out of the cult, but they don't really understand what happened to them. They haven't gone back to process the lies, the hypnotic processing, to really get a firm handle on it so that they can be cult-proofed for the future. And apparently this seems to be the case with Ginni.
Why do you consider Trump a cult leader rather than just a demagogue who understands populism?
So when I was asked by Simon & Schuster to do The Cult of Trump, what I started with was the knowledge that Donald Trump displays the stereotypical profile of an authoritarian cult leader, malignant narcissism. So the lack of empathy, the grandiosity, the entitlement, thinking they're above the law, pathological lying. So when I started the book, I knew he had a cult of personality, and maybe his business enterprises were. I knew he was doing MLM groups, which were mind control cults, the way he ran them. But then as I researched the group, I realized there was the family that Michael Pence was recruited into, Opus Dei, New Apostolic, all of these different authoritarian cultic groups that comprise the cult of Trump that I believe got him in power and brought their base to be voting for him and politicking for him.
So you said a minute ago that the technique used to get Ginni Thomas out of LifeSpring was one that didn't make her well prepared to not be susceptible again, and you briefly described how it should be done to free somebody, hopefully permanently. So if Ginni Thomas said to you, I buy what you're selling, for lack of a better expression, I have joined the cult of Trump, and I want you to get me out, Stephen Hassan, how would you?
Well, I have a unique relationship with her, even though I haven't talked with her since 1992. She used to like me and respect me and want my knowledge to be shared with
But
Congress.
I don't mean just you personally. I mean the technique, and I only have a minute. What's the message?
The key thing is, Ginni, let's acknowledge, yes, Chinese communist brainwashing exists. Here's Lifton's criteria. Here's my bite model. Let's go back in time. When did you first like Donald Trump? Because my understanding was she was a Ted Cruz person. I'd want to back her up and then get her to realize what are the forces influencing her into where she currently is. And the best technique is asking a respectful question and waiting for an answer, and really encouraging that introspection and reality testing.
I only have a couple of seconds. You're not suggesting that everybody who supports Donald Trump is a cult member, are you? You're saying some are, and you believe she may be. Am I right about that?
No, I'm not suggesting that, and I believe cults exist on a continuum. However, if you are blindly believing that any negative information is satanic and evil, and you do thought stopping and have phobias, then you're in an undue influence situation.
Okay, Ginni Thomas first, and a few million more after her. Stephen Hassan, it's good to see you. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank
I appreciate it.
so much. Bye.